The ropes burn where they have rubbed her wrists raw. Isabella Ferrante is 26 years old, and everything she once knew has been stripped away in the space of a single night. She can taste salt on her lips, feel the slow, endless movement of the sea beneath the ship, hear the quiet prayers of dozens of other women packed into the darkness around her. They were taken from their beds in Vieste a week ago. Wives, daughters, mothers, neighbors. Until that night, Isabella had been the wife of Marco Ferrante, a fisherman whose boat supplied much of the village. She kept accounts, raised 2 daughters, attended Mass each Sunday in the same church where her parents and grandparents had married. Her life had been ordinary, rooted, predictable. Now she crouches in the hold of a corsair ship, her wedding ring gone, her clothing torn, her future unknowable. Her daughters were taken from her on the beach during the sorting. 8 and 12 years old. She does not know if they are alive. When the hatch opens, sunlight floods the darkness. A voice speaks Italian with practiced ease. The corsair captain.
Amid al-Rasid.
He has raided these coasts before. He orders her brought on deck. Buyers want to see her before they dock. She does not resist. She learned early what resistance costs. As the coastline of North Africa comes into view, white buildings climbing hills, minarets rising against the sky, Hamid names the city. Algiers, the slave capital of the Mediterranean. By nightfall, he tells her she will belong to someone else. When she asks about her daughters, his answer is cold and efficient. Children are valuable. They will be sold separately. Younger ones adapt more easily. They forget their old lives. This moment marks Isabella's true crossing. Not across the sea, but into a system designed to erase who she was and replace her with something useful. For centuries, European history avoided this story. We are taught about the Atlantic slave trade, about millions taken from Africa to the Americas. That history is rightly remembered. But for 300 years, another trade moved in the opposite direction. From the 16th through the 18th century, North African corsairs raided the coasts of Europe. Italy, Spain, France, England, Ireland, even Iceland. Entire villages were emptied. Watchtowers lined the shores. Families fled inland at the first sight of unfamiliar sails. Between 1 and 1.5 million Europeans were taken. Men, women, and children sold into bondage across the Mediterranean. And then, over time, the memory faded. Not because records were lost, but because the shame was too heavy to carry. Algiers was the center of this world. A city whose economy was built on human capture. Corsairs were not romantic pirates. They were state-sponsored raiders operating with military precision under Ottoman-aligned governments. Their ships were fast. Their intelligence networks extensive. Their markets efficient. When captives arrived, they were processed like cargo. Bathed, examined, categorized. Their value assessed based on age, health, appearance, skills. Women faced particular classifications. Some were directed toward elite households. Others toward labor. Some toward fates the records barely describe. Isabella is separated from the others. Her education and composure mark her as valuable. She is escorted not to the public market, but to a private auction where wealthy buyers compete discreetly. There, she meets other women who have already learned the rules. Survival does not mean escape. It means lasting longer than the system expects. The auction determines her future in minutes. She is purchased by a young, wealthy man whose interest is not accidental. He paid more because she was not yet broken. In his household, Isabella learns quickly. Older women teach her how power works inside captivity, how compliance and resistance are both tools, how survival often requires becoming so. Meeting you never intended to be. She listens. She watches. She memorizes names, routines, alliances, and she waits for news of her daughters. Information finally comes through the same networks that sustain the trade. Her older daughter is in a merchant's household, treated reasonably, alive. Her younger daughter has been taken into the household of the ruler himself, educated, protected, absorbed into a world Isabella cannot reach. Knowing they are alive becomes both comfort and torment. There is one remaining thread of hope. Redemptionist priests, Catholic orders whose mission was to ransom captives. They negotiated quietly, raising funds across Europe, documenting what they witnessed. Their records are why we know this history at all. Women were rarely ransomed. The shame was considered too great. Families preferred silence to return. But Isabella understands that freedom, even incomplete, might give her power she does not have now. During a festival when supervision relaxes, she risks everything to reach a priest. She tells her story, not for sympathy, but for information, for connection, for possibility. Months pass. Survival becomes routine. Waiting becomes endurance. Nearly a year after her capture, word comes. Funds have been raised. Isabella will be ransomed. She will leave Algiers alive. Her daughters will remain. Freedom comes with its own weight. To leave them behind is unbearable. But to stay would mean losing even the chance to help them someday. When she finally walks out of captivity, she carries more than memory. She carries knowledge of a system Europe tried to forget, of women who never returned, of children who grew up speaking different languages, worshipping different gods, remembering only fragments of who they once were. Isabella's story is not unique. It is one of hundreds of thousands. And that is why it was buried. Because remembering it forces us to confront a past that does not fit comfortably into simple narratives of victim and villain. This history was not forgotten by accident. It was set aside because it was too painful, too complicated, too human. And now it is remembered again.